The unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Today we're going to talk about Kumorata. But first I'd like to say a little bit more about the Denkoroku as a whole. A little more than what I said last night. And I might seem to be repeating a bit of it, but there's more, and I think it's important to clarify some things that one can misunderstand. Denkoroku, the record of the transmission of the light. This is a really beautiful title. When you hear it, we think, ooh, it really kind of strikes a chord within us, the record of the transmission of the light. And, as I said yesterday, we can feel a little intimidated by the Denkoroku. What do I know about the transmission of the light? What does it mean for me and my life? And we can feel that it's for other people, wiser, more enlightened people than me, not for us. And both monks and lay people can feel this way. All of us can have this sort of feeling of transmission of the light. Doesn't sound like something I'm going to have, understand or experience anytime soon. But actually, maybe not. Maybe it's not quite like that. And what does Keizan mean by the transmission of the light? He is talking about experience of the light, Buddha nature, for oneself, and the continuity of that light from master to disciple, from Shakyamuni Buddha down to Kona-jo. And of course, through Keizan, down to us, and of course he didn't write about it. That transmission of the light, the understanding of Buddha nature. In the Denkoroku, there's always an exchange between master and disciple. And this often results in the disciple understanding the truth for themselves. But not always. Sometimes the disciple has already understood. And sometimes they only understand after training for many more years. There's always lots of training, many years of training before or after this little exchange that begins each chapter of the Denkoroku. It's not the master giving them some secret thing. The master's helping them to wake up to what they already have. And as I said, sometimes the disciple has already woken up. So the master's not giving them something that other people don't have. And I think it's important to remember this. It's not some special secret thing. And each of them does awaken. This is clear. Each of them awakens to the truth for themselves. Now again, we may feel intimidated. Most of us don't feel that we know the truth for ourselves. And even if we might have glimpsed that truth, the light of Buddha nature for ourselves, we don't feel that we know it fully. There's always more. We just catch a little glimpse. And still, a little glimpse is a real seeing of truth. Reverend Master used to say, even whether it's a small enlightenment or a great enlightenment, it's still enlightenment. You're still seeing truth. But we just must not hold on to it or try to get it back. We have to keep going. Not cling on to, I've got this thing, or I've had this thing, or anything. Because in fact, what matters is what we do. Not what we've seen, not what we've experienced, but how we train, how we live our life, how we keep to the precept. It's not that, we have this thing and then we're somehow special. Or we don't have this thing, therefore we're sort of unspecial. It's not like that. And Keizan seems to be both encouraging and discouraging in the Denkoroku. He's constantly saying things like, when you fully awaken to your true self, you will meet that person, in capitals. If you fail to meet him, you will be like a restless, disembodied spirit, vainly clutching at reeds or clinging to trees for support. Lest you practice your meditation to no avail and spend your life in vain, you should clarify what today's story is about. He's always saying stuff like this. But then right away he says, right after that he says, should you entertain the notion that since the way of the Buddhas and ancestors selects individuals according to their innate capabilities, there's no place where I am equal to the task. You should know that of all foolish ideas, this is the most foolish. Who amongst the ancients was a person not born of father and mother? The most foolish idea we can have is a thought that there's some special thing, people are selected by the Buddhas according to their innate capabilities, and it's clearly not for me. Reverend Master used to say, the Christians say, many are called and few are chosen. And in Buddhism we say, all are called and few answer. So we're all called, we all have the potential. Who was not a person not born of father and mother? Who was not a human being like us? We all have the ability, we are not lacking anything. The way of the Buddhas and ancestors does not select certain special people. It's open to all of us. We just have to follow it wholeheartedly. And Keizan does this over and over again. He says, if you haven't realized the truth, you're not a real trainee. And everyone has the ability to do it. And when he does this, we can tend to hear the first part and miss the second. So we think, if I haven't realized the truth, I'm no good. And not hear the bit about everyone having Buddha nature and everyone being able to do it, even me. It's easy to just get stuck with that first bit. If you don't realize the truth, you're useless, you're a worm, you've wasted your life, your training's all in vain, me. And he also says, just get going. You can do it. Do not think you can't. He's trying to encourage his monks, his community, and often by giving them a good bang on the head, not to discourage us. He's not trying to tell us we're useless and make us all discouraged. He's telling us to train with diligence. And he's always pointing out the pitfalls. He's constantly telling us that we can do it. If we look, just open the book anywhere, actually, you'll find something really encouraging, like just stop searching outside yourself and progress onward by turning to face yourself. Don't squander your time, don't look around in all directions, but keep yourself carefully focused. If you are like this, original nature will, of course, manifest itself as bright as the sun and moon. Nowhere is it too dark for it to illumine. And another one, if you truly keep to your first intention, how can you not become one who has realized the truth? If we keep on with the training, how can we fail? But we have to stay focused. We have to keep going, never give up, or just coast along. We have to truly keep to that first intention, our first wholehearted aspiration for truth. So instead of being discouraged by his admonitions, we can feel encouraged by his telling us we can do this for ourselves. We just have to do it. We have to do the work. Which is why when somebody has an experience of truth, they still have to do the work. It's not like it's some act of grace that falls upon us and suddenly we're transformed, all our karma falls off, and we're some pure spiritual being. It's not like that. We still have our own mistakes, shortcomings, weaknesses, things to overcome. So, what is this realizing truth? Is it just a momentary experience? Or is it a whole way of training? In our tradition, we don't place a lot of emphasis on Kensho, experience of truth. We're not trying to get something. Keizan himself says, be keen to avoid seeking after enlightenment, Just pledge yourself to the true self, in capitals, only. And he does a whole chapter on the folly of trying to get enlightenment, grasping after wisdom. Just pledge yourself to the true self only. This is exactly it, is exactly what we do. We're not trying to get something. We're giving ourselves to something. The true self, the true being, original nature, Buddha nature. Keizan has many names for it. And the term the true self might be a bit problematic for some of us. It sounds a bit like a bigger, better, more enlightened me. And that's of course not what it is. It's our true nature, which isn't a matter of a self, a me. It's that which embraces all our little seeming selves, something much bigger. And we're pledging ourselves to it. It's something much greater than we are. Pledging is a good word. It's a matter of faith and commitment, pledging ourselves. Devotion and relinquishment of me and my concerns. Pledging ourselves to something greater. It's not about me and my experience, or me trying to get something, or me being a good trainee or a good meditator or whatever. We do try to do our best to meditate as deeply as we can, to keep to the precepts as best we can, but it's not to get something or get somewhere. It's looking beyond me and my concerns to that which embraces all of us, all of our stuff, all of our history, or everything about us. It embraces all of that. We are all part of it. We pledge ourselves to it. And this is something we can all do. We don't have to be specially wise or specially talented or well versed in the scriptures. We don't have to look for some experience which will deal with all our problems. We just need to pledge ourselves, to devote ourselves to that which is greater than we are, the ocean of Buddha nature, however we like to call it or think of it, to venerate it, to do our best to live in accord with it. And in order to do this, we meditate and we keep to the precepts. They help us, both of these practices, our basic practices, meditation, keeping to the precepts as best we can, help us to live in accord with that great ocean of Buddha nature, that one, the true self. This is how we do it, and we can all do it. We are doing it. We are, even now, doing our best to meditate and keep to the precepts. So we don't have to worry. We can take heart and know that the Denkoroku is for us. It's not an exclusive thing, a single line of ancestors who all had something that nobody else had. And as I said yesterday, there were many disciples, many branches, all sorts of people, monks and lay people, male and female, old and young, who pledged themselves to that great matter, the ocean of Buddha nature, and trained themselves deeply, sincerely, and with complete devotion. And we can too. So, just thought I'd mention it. Now I'm going to talk about Kumorata, the 19th ancestor. And with each chapter, of course, we have this little initial exchange. Shasta pointed out the following to Kumorata. Long ago, the world-honored one prophesied that 1,000 years after his entry into nirvana, a great scholar would appear in Tokara who would pass on the marvelous transmission. Your meeting me at the present time fulfills this most propitiously. As the result of hearing this, Kumorata awakened his ability to see his former lives. Now this isn't a sudden great enlightenment. He's awakened his ability to see his former lives. He's awakened his Dharma-seeing eye. But Shasta hasn't given him some special secret thing. So the little story about Kumorata. In the far past, Kumorata had been a deva in one of the heavens. There's a whole lot of heavens, as we know in Buddhism. So he's a deva in one of these heavens. And one day he saw a bodhisattva's beautiful necklace, and he wanted it. And because of this sudden greed, he went down a few heavens. He's demoted. Then he heard about the scripture of great wisdom. And something struck a chord in him. And he went up to Brahma's heaven as a result of this. And eventually he became a teacher there. So he begins to train. Here's the scripture of great wisdom. And goes up a few heavens. But he's still in samsara. He's still prone to greed, anger, and delusion. And no matter how blissful the heavenly realms may be, they're still in samsara. And one can still make mistakes, be still prone to greed, anger, and delusion. They're just one of the 6 realms. Now, we could apply this to our present life for us. When things are going really well, when we're happy, we could be considered as being in a heavenly realm. To many people in this world, the kind of comfortable life a lot of us have here in the West would be like some kind of heaven. You couldn't imagine living in the comfort that we take for granted. But we know it's not just a heavenly realm. It's not blissful all the time. We may have running water, but that's not the answer to happiness. And we know that we can make serious mistakes, and all of a sudden we're completely miserable, down in hell, or in a much less comfortable place than we were before. And when we're fortunate enough to encounter the Dharma, as Kumorata did, things improve a whole lot. So finally, Kumorata is born in the human realm. And because of past merit, he encounters Shasta, the previous ancestor, who happens to be coming to his house. And he asks Shasta whose follower he is. And Shasta says, I'm a disciple of the Buddha. When Kumorata heard the Buddha's name, he grew extremely frightened and immediately slammed the door shut. Shasta knocked at the door for some time before Kumorata answered, "No one home." Shasta asked, "Who then is this?" It replies, "No one." When Kumorata heard these words, he knew that Shasta was no ordinary person. So he quickly opened the door and invited him in. And as related above, Shasta told him of the Buddha's ancient prophecy, and he realized his ability to know his previous lives. Now Kezan says, what's happening here needs to be handled carefully. Even though we may understand a little bit, we have a bit of a grasp of what the words teach or understand about birth and death. He says, if you do not understand that your true original nature is void of substance, luminous, unimaginable, and unbeclouded, you do not know what it is that the Buddhas have realized. And you would still not have rid yourself of the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and delusion. So even if you have a little bit of wisdom, if you don't understand our true original nature being void of substance, luminous, unimaginable, and unbeclouded, then we're missing something. We wouldn't have rid ourselves of the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and delusion, just like Kumorata, who's seized with desire for a necklace. And later on he's scared stiff when he hears the name of the Buddha. But he's still made a lot of merit. And he meets Shasta. He's not an ordinary person. And yet, he's just like us. He's not separate from us. But he has made a lot of merit. Kumorata awakens to his ability to see his former lives. Kezan talks about this, seeing our former lives. It's usually understood to mean being able to see the past and the future. But of what use would that be, he asks. He says, if you become aware that your original and unchanging true nature is neither enlightened, unenlightened, or a delusion, then all the gateways to the teaching and their immeasurably profound meanings are all seen to be wellings up in the mind. Everything is embraced within Buddha nature. We don't have to get stuck with this idea of past lives, past, present, future. Buddha nature encompasses everything, past lives, present and future. And Keizan says if we haven't reached this state, we will be caught up in past and future and we won't know what our true nature is. And you won't see clearly that it does not go wrong. When you arrive at this state, what is to be taken as past? What as present? What pertains to the Buddhas? What to sentient beings? Not a single object blocks the eye. Not a single speck of dust comes in touch with the hand. There are just the qualities of being, void of substance and luminous, simply being, unbeclouded, free of everything and boundless. The Tathagata who realized enlightenment in the distant past is in fact the sentient being who, by nature, does not swerve, is constant. It's not separate beings, it's all part of one being. Even when someone awakens to the truth in this way, nothing is added. Likewise, when someone has not yet realized the truth, he lacks nothing. There is nothing missing, even when we're deluded, blinded, crazed with self. We lack nothing, actually. And when we completely realize the truth, we don't have some extra thing. Nothing is added. Whether we've realized the truth yet or not, we lack nothing, there is nothing wrong with us. To touch upon the awareness, he says, that it has been like this since time began. To touch upon the awareness that Buddha nature has always been, from the very beginning, is what is meant by awakening to one's ability to see former lives. Buddha nature encompasses everything, past, present, future. And if we haven't reached this state, we'll be caught up in our past and future, caught up in our history, and we won't know what our true nature is, and we won't see clearly that it does not go wrong. Our true nature is beyond our ideas of past and future, or delusion, or enlightenment. It's beyond our ideas of me. Being caught up in past and future, getting stuck with our ideas of what we are, or what we once were, or what has happened to us, or what we've done, whether in a past life or in this life, last week or even 5 minutes ago, it's all the same thing really. Getting stuck with our story, our ideas about who we are, what we've done, and what we're like. Thinking, I am this kind of person with these ideas, views, and so forth. Or, I did this terrible thing, and it's always following me around. Or, this dreadful thing happened to me, and I can't let it go. We need to see what we can of these things. We need to train with our karmic tendencies and our weaknesses to treat them with kindness, but not get stuck with them. We train ourselves, we change. We're not stuck in some everlasting cage of our own story, our history, our feeling of me, my weaknesses, my problems, my strengths, my views, my everything. Don't cling to the past. Don't cling to things long gone and mistakes long regretted. Not to limit ourselves to our little ideas of who and what we think we are. There is something far greater of which we are a part. Or that we, as we think we are, have done and thought. All our lives, all our history, all the things that we've done from time immemorial is actually all just part of that. Yes, we're responsible for it, we have to deal with it, and yet it's not the ultimate reality. It's just part of Buddha nature. We don't have to get stuck with it and solidify it. We can relinquish. So Kumorata is in a heaven, makes a mistake, falls down a few heavens, learns the Dharma, goes up a few heavens, eventually ends up as a human being, and finally becomes one of the ancestors. We change. We're not stuck in heaven, we're not stuck in hell, we're not stuck with who we once were or what we thought we were. We move, we change, we're fluid, and we're just part of the great matter. And the ability to see one's former lives, says Kazan, is knowing that great matter. And whatever it is that goes from life to life anyway, it's not a self. It's not something we can grasp onto and call me. And Kazan says, to know that which has radiance from the first is called the ability to see one's past lives. To know that which has radiance from the first. To relinquish the idea of self, of me and my stuff and my history and so forth. And to know that which has radiance from the first. And there's a little poem at the end. Clinging to a body from a past life, made ever so remote by the passage of time, we suddenly meet face to face with the one from ancient days, the great matter, that to which we pledge ourselves. We suddenly meet face to face with that, but we can't grasp after it, we can't chase it, it's elusive, we can't hold it in our hand. We just suddenly may come face to face with it, and we pledge ourselves to it. We train ourselves, we do our best to live in accord with it, relinquishing that clinging to the past, the future, our ideas of me, what I'm trying to get, where I've been, what I can do, what I can't do. Just to do our very best to train ourselves to live in accord with that right now, moment to moment, breath by breath. This is our training. Very straightforward, very simple, not easy, but it's much simpler than we may think. Homage to all the Buddhas and all worlds. Homage to all the Bodhisattvas and all worlds. Homage to the scripture of great wisdom. Tomorrow we'll talk about Mishaka.